Hi. Welcome back to another episode on the Healthy Wisdom series with Dr. Jen Chen. Today, we're going to continue our conversation on the wisdom of self-mastery. And we're going to explore our self-worth and bring that perspective into today's episode. Now, one of the concepts that I think has been really valuable in the transformation of the way my life has been the past 2 years compared to the way it was 3, 4, 5 years ago has been almost like unrecognizable. I think I've made some major strides because of this one concept that I'm going to introduce to you. Going from 5 figures to 6 figures is probably one of the things that I just never thought would be achievable in such a short period in time. But I realized that part of the reason was because I was not valuing myself enough. And I'm going to kind of retrace my steps a little bit. The concept that I wanted to kind of bring to light today is that our self-worth is connected to our net worth. I'm going to repeat that so you can grasp it. Our self-worth is connected to our net worth. And in other words, our net worth is a representation of our value and how we value ourselves and the value that we bring to others. So, in other words, the way we see ourselves is the way we value ourselves. And the net worth is almost like the real life representation of what that looks like. So, one of the things that I'd like to challenge you to do is to take a look at your bank account. Just take a look at your bank account and look at it today. Does the figure in your bank account represent the value that you bring to the table, the value that you bring to others in your community, in your job, in your career, in your life? And I challenge you to do something if it does not represent, because quite often we don't value ourselves enough. And I'm going to be totally transparent here. 3, 4 years ago, my bank account did not represent the value that I feel I bring to the table. Because I'm one of those people that, whatever it is that I choose to do or that I put my mind to, I always give it 120%. Always. 120% is the least that I'll give it, because if there is a problem that I cannot solve, I will work my butt off and I will do whatever it is that it takes for me to find the answer if I don't have the answer. I'm just that type of person. And so when I had to take a hard look and face the reality that I blatantly was not even making enough to keep my business open, I thought to myself, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And when I was introduced to this concept that your value is represented in your net worth, it was like a mind-blowing experience, because I started thinking of the bigger picture. If I couldn't keep my doors open, everybody that was under my care would have to go somewhere else. And I'm not saying that going somewhere else is a bad thing, but I know I provide good care. And I know that I'm one of those people that will do whatever it is that it takes to get my patients to the next level, to get them out of whatever pain that they're experiencing from. Like, I am a really good healthcare provider. And if I couldn't keep my doors open to serve these people, they're going to have to seek somebody else's help. And I'm not doing them any favors by doing that. So I had to really reevaluate how I was going to turn that around and start valuing the time and effort and value that I bring to all those that I take care of, and also be able to provide for my family, keep my doors open, be able to repay my parents for their help in keeping me afloat during these times. I had to really take ownership of where I was going with this. And I really had to take a hard look at, what it was that was the problem, which was actually me. And the biggest problem with myself is that I was not valuing myself. So in other words, I could provide the value, but I was not actually doing, I owed myself an explanation for the way I was performing. And so what I did was, I had to upgrade not just how I was doing things, how I was operating. I had to really get down to the nitty gritty. And so I got myself a coach. I started looking into different ways to upgrade my own business acumen because I was not operating my clinic in a successful business forefront. And I was doing everybody a disservice by not operating in as professional a manner and treating this like my life depended on it. So in other words, this doesn't sound very good, but I was kind of treating this as a hobby of some sorts, I guess you could call it that, because I wasn't open like 5 days a week, like a lot of other businesses. And so, granted, I was having kids, I was, being a mother, like, that being said, those are not excuses. You cannot use those as excuses. And so I really had to hunker down and start seeing and actually holding myself accountable for the value that I bring to the table, but also to recognize the value that I bring to the table and not let that go to waste. And so, like I said, I got myself a coach. I have, uh, as much time as I can, and I learn from, a lot of, um, uh, uh, um, teachers, mentors. I also then started, reading up as much as I could and learning about, business and how to run a small business so that I could actually do things with a good direction, some guidance, and that has really transformed, the way I operate uh, my business today. And it was a long journey because I had to double up on the time and the effort, and also I had to humble myself to the point where I had to admit to myself that, you know what, you don't know it all. You don't know it all. And it was a humbling experience because as I was learning to become a better version, you could call it a 2.0 version of Dr. Jen Chen, um, I I had to put my ego aside a lot of times. And so this was something that I found to be a very valuable experience. No pun intended, right? To learn my value. It was a valuable experience to learn my value. So I think this is something I know I'm speaking to somebody today who is probably right where I was 4 years ago. And I know that you are also struggling with that, because I think culturally, as women, we also struggle with that. The identity, the value that we derive for our own selves quite often comes from other people's approval. And so if we stop accepting what other people say that we can and cannot do, I think we free ourselves from the external validation that we very often seek. I think women do struggle more than men on this aspect, although, I have heard of quite a few cases where, men also have that issue of the external validation that they do seek. And but I'd say hands down, like women definitely have a lot more of a struggle with this exact thing about self-value. And I'm hoping that today, we having this conversation, we can actually help, those of you who are struggling with this to perhaps be able to think of it differently and start, sort of valuing yourself and let let the world see you how you want to see yourself. And you do have to start by valuing yourself. Now, one of the things that I think we could start by valuing ourselves is to own who we are. And in one of our previous episodes, especially the series on loving ourselves, finding ourselves, I think when we own who we are, that's when we arrive at the part where we do not need to prove ourselves to anybody but ourselves, right? Once you own who you are, you don't need that external approval, right? But how do we get there? How do we get there? Well, we need to, first of all, recognize that we have value. We have a lot of value that we are bringing to our lives, to our communities, to our families, to our businesses, to our jobs, to our careers. We have a lot that we are bringing to the table. And don't dismiss even the smallest things that you do for people. One of the things that I always took for granted because it was something that I personally I feel like I'm very gifted and that I've been very blessed to have is my energy, like my positive, excitable energy that can transmit like through the room. Whenever I mean, I've been told by a lot of people who know me that, when I walk in the room, the room just lights up. And I never recognized that about myself. But, in a lot of different circles, that is worth a lot of cha-ching, that is worth a lot of money. Why? It's a different kind of value. It may not be a monetary value, but in terms of energy, if you can light up a room and you can bring people to a different level, that is priceless. You can turn the the nervous, anxious energy into something that's very empowering and and energizing. That is not it's not something that just anybody can do. And so I have been gifted with this ability, and until I recognized that, I just always downplayed it, and I just said, oh well, but that doesn't mean that, um that is, I never saw the value in that. But it is something that, can change people's lives even. And, I'll never forget, I had not just one, I had several patients throughout the years who, had an appointment with me. And when they walked in the room, I knew something was wrong. And quite often, by the end of the appointment, after I would sit down and actually just, we would just chat sometimes, about, what are some of the struggles that they were going through in their lives. And, at the end of the appointment time, I had them say to me, it was very surprising to me because, this would be after the fact, right? So, I knew that by the end of the appointment, they felt different, like their energy was at a different level, and they didn't seem as gloom and doom as they were when they came in. And so they later would share with me, either through a text or a phone call or an email, that that day that they were, uh, they had their appointment, they would always thank